Welcome to Kingdomize, the podcast, where we discuss how to see our lives and our world through a kingdom lens, how to infuse kingdom culture into our families, our workplaces, and our cities, as we all participate in the dream of Jesus to see his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Hey, so welcome back to Kingdomize, the podcast, and I am here with my good friend, Ian Green, the president, the Pope of Kingdomize, if you will. And we are joined today by an amazing man, amazing generational leader, Derek Schneider from Oshawa, Ontario, Canada, Earth. Derek, it is so good to have you here. How are you, my friend?
It is great to be here, and especially to be on with the Pope is a rare occasion, I have to say. So,
Like, how often do you get to do that, right?
not too often. I love both of you. Have been watching from some things closer, some things from a distance, and it's just a real honor to be here today.
Excellent. So it's great to have you, Derek. And so we're in our Solutionaries series. We're talking with people that don't just talk about stuff but do it. And so we talk about the idea that there are revolutionaries that solve problems, and we're calling them solutionaries. So so Derek, thanks for agreeing to be with us. Your bio is fantastic, and I was thinking back as we were playing through this, having you on. I think you and I met probably about 10 years ago. I knew your father first, and your dad was holding a conference in Toronto, and I think you and I were both speakers there. And I think that's the first time, maybe, I think it was around 10 years ago, that you and I were both speaking, and that's when we officially kind of started chatting. And
that was Catch the Fire. Yep.
Yes. And I think it was around 10 years ago. And so it's kind of what you just said. I've been kind of following you from afar. And then last year we had a joint friend that was asking how to do stuff with their city, and we were able to help with that. And so really good to have your generational leadership in churches. It's fantastic. And you can talk about that if you want. But the thing that you sent me, your bio, that's most exciting for me is you're a recording artist. I didn't know. Like, you're a transformation specialist, and you've got the founder of the History Makers Church and History Makers Society and History Makers everything. And that's all good. That's wonderful. People know that about you. But I did not know you were a recording artist. Like, were you and Bieber hanging out at the same time? Like, what happened?
Well, there's quite a generation gap there between me and Bieber, I'll have to say.
Yeah.
And I actually don't always share that, but that's the real truth. I was in, and this makes it even stranger, it was the hip hop genre of music. I had a single out that was playing in the clubs, in magazines. If you were driving your car back in those days and turned on the radio to some of the hottest stations, you'd hear one of my songs there. And I was backsliding. Like, I'm fourth generation pastor. On both sides of the family. So I was going to do anything I could to run from that, right?
So not a lot of them had Shorty in the club, could we say?
Oh no.
Shorty was not in the club with your generation.
Oh no. Derek was in the club, and but my mom and dad would go into my bedroom. I know this is not the focus of today, but my mom and dad would go into my bedroom when I was out living lawless, and they would join hands and pray for my soul. And God literally sought me and brought me back. It was a power encounter that didn't happen in church.
Yeah.
And this part does really connect. Nothing against power encounters that happen in church.
Sure.
The Lord walked into the room and told me I was living in compromise. I was called to preach, and he did it. He chose to interrupt my plans as the lawyers were looking over a recording contract that I was about to sign and sell my soul.
Wow.
And so, he literally spoke to me. I heard him clearly, as I never had before, that I'm to turn down the record deal and preach. And you know that you would never turn down the amount of work it takes to get to that place in the music industry. You would never throw it all the way unless Jesus asked you to, and it was really him, because when people really meet Jesus, you can't say no to him.
That's awesome. So I'll say all the official stuff now that you're a requested speaker, coach, best-selling author, transformation specialist, but the recording artist buddy, that's a great story that maybe others hadn't heard. So we're
Hmm.
fans of that. And at the end of the broadcast today, we'll have you talk a little bit about your book and how people can contact you. So we'll do that
Sure,
later on.
sure.
So today, we have you here, Derek, to hear your story. And so I love that piece of your story. So we're going to give you lots of time. So who's Derek Schneider? What do you do? What's History Makers? And why do you do it?
Sure. Well, great question. So, almost picking up from where we just left off, after that, I began preaching, and my box, so to speak, if you call it a box, was revival meetings. That was it for me, because after I had that encounter with the Lord, I kept going back to the bedroom and praying. That was, I had discovered kind of what I felt was the essence of this whole thing, that if you pray a lot, God moves. That was as big as my understanding was. And so I'd be invited to speak at things, God would move, and revival. That was it for me. And when I came on staff at the embassy church, when my dad was leading that, we went right into significant meetings that we called revival. I was pastoring the youth and young adults, and for close to 8 years, we had incredible meetings going on. Buses from other churches coming in to see what God was doing, miracle healings, all of the stuff, right? And for a new pastor, there just, in my mind, there wasn't anything better than that. This is it. But I remember, and it's interesting when we talk about solutionaries, solutions are a result of a problem. So you can't have a solution without a problem.
Sure. Right.
And so this is how God dealt with me, was he gave me a problem. And the problem began with, one night we had a young guy testify who was healed of, it was Tourette's syndrome. That's what it was. And he came back, doctor documented, miracle. And he testified from the stage. And that night when I went out to my car and drive home, I don't know why I didn't see this the way I saw it in this moment. But as I was driving home, cars were going by me. I'm seeing people on the street. And I thought, do you realize the God who made you, who loves you, just showed up at 416 Taunton Road tonight? How do I get your attention? There's God.
Yeah.
Like this is, I'm thinking I can show you God. And I'm having this experience driving home, and that sent me on a mission of failure, which was flyers, uh, better website, come to my church, if you don't come to my church, you're never going to be, this whole thing of obsession with getting a few more people into a building. And by the way, if God's dream was fulfilled that all would come to know him in any city, we don't have enough buildings to house
Right.
his dream anyways.
Right.
So God was kind of breaking my box, and I put all this effort into getting a few more people to come to our church, and a few more people came to the church. And then he pulled the rug right out from under me. And it was like the glory just left the meetings. Uh, the meetings were still good. We're still Pentecostal charismatic. There's a few people that get saved. 2% of them stay. Some good stuff going. The usual.
Yeah. Yeah.
It became very mundane, and I didn't realize. I was offended with God. I thought I had done something wrong. That what happened? The revival started to trickle out, and I didn't realize that God was about to show me the other side of a two-sided coin, which is revival and reformation.
Oh, yeah.
Revival, transformation. And to do that, he de-emphasized one, got me really frustrated. And I tried to reproduce the old glory. I'm going to dig the ancient wells, which weren't so ancient. They were just about a year ago. And nothing. I mean, there is nothing sadder than watching an anointed minister trying to replicate the old glory. And so, long story short, he had mercy on me and helped me to make the shift into, hey, it's maybe not so much about how many people I can get in my building, but how much kingdom I can bring to the world.
Yeah.
And
Really
so
cool. Really
I,
good.
I started focusing all my attention on training and equipping. And back then, training and equipping wasn't the big buzzword. Like, not everybody had an academy back then. And I started focusing on the people we had there in getting them out the door and into society. And the first thing, go ahead,
So,
yeah.
so Derek, just before you go to that, because I really want to drill into the society groups in a minute, but talk to us a little bit about what changed, like what changed your thought process? Because you use a phrase, and I've used myself, from revival to reformation, and we say all the time, like if you need revival, you should go for it, because we still believe in revival, just don't stop there, right? So, so what was it though that woke you? Was it just this experience? Were you listening to other speakers? Were there like what was it that helped you in that transition time to grab a hold of that reformation part as well?
Yeah, I kind of call it the idol of revival because I believe in revival.
Yeah,
But if you understand revival, once you're revived, okay, we had been revived.
yeah,
So now it was time to, and I wish I could say there was a significant, I have deep connection and roots in the past with Dr. Sunday Adelaja, who I was seeing the revival going on over in Ukraine. I was flying back and forth there. He's a real spiritual father to me and mentor. So I was seeing some of that. But we all know no matter what revival you travel to, translating that back into your own context doesn't always,
yeah,
rarely. And so, to be honest, the story might be a little underwhelming, but a major shift happened when this leader I had poured into for nearly a decade, oversaw a bunch of the cell groups, all in-house stuff, great leader. She came and sat down in my office one day and said, I feel God is calling me to the marketplace. And back then, what do you mean marketplace? You're going to sell some fruit at a fruit stand? Like what are we talking about here? Marketplace. She said, I got hired on at Chapter's bookstore, and God has told me I'm to be a light there.
yeah.
And so I really took on the image of Pharaoh at that moment, who would not let the people go. Uh, just keep in mind, I had no backdrop for equipping and sending really at that point. And so she had raised up some co-leaders that were mature enough to take her place as she placed emphasis at Chapter's bookstore of all places. I thought, what are you going to do there? And so I reluctantly let her go. We prayed over her, at the front, and she's going to go and bring God. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. Well, the truth is, she actually became salt and light. She actually was a mature daughter, not a baby Christian. And she was very quickly promoted to manager at Chapter's bookstore. And one of the things she did was when she was on shift, she changed the music that played over these massive speakers to Christian instrumental music. She obviously couldn't use, with words, but she went after the presence in the place she worked. And then she created a no swearing rule that every time one of her coworkers swore or cursed, they had to put a quarter in a jar or something. She just began.
Square jar at Chapters. How exciting!
Oh yeah, this is kingdomizing,
Yeah,
guys.
buddy, this is it. Like
Well, it
just
gets.
hanging around Ian, I'd get rich. No, it's a joke, Ian. It's a joke.
Oh, so, but here's the point: is that as she just let some of that out, people began to come to her for counseling. They knew she was a Christian, and they would ask her advice on stuff if they were going through something, if they had a problem. She presented herself as having a solution. And pretty soon she's in the back office counseling these people, and one by one they began to get saved. Approximately 10 of her workers there got saved, and they came and joined our church. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I got it. This is a church growth strategy. I sent one and I got 10 back." And it just, the light bulb went on for me that if I sow, and you find this in Matthew 13, right? If I, sons and daughters, the seeds of the kingdom are sons and daughters sown. I sowed one, I got 10 back, and they're ushering, they're joining the worship there's growth happening. And that was a switch that flipped where I said, I want to get my hands on every single person in this church and help them to discover their platform out there. Sure, serve in the house, just like a family. Wash dishes, clean up after yourself, but let me get you out there. Ian, yeah.
So look, it's I've had these discussions a lot the last couple of years. It sounds like it became the new sexy form of evangelism, that we throw people into the marketplace so we get more bums on our seats on our Sunday services. I'm not thinking you are thinking that, but help me understand how what transitioned in your thinking after that.
I almost didn't hear anything after you said sexy, but no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, that's what you immediately go to. And when I do seminars on this, pastors get real excited because they think I can just up my numbers. And this is how I will grow my thing, my kingdom. And what I found out was that in a first world nation, a lot of people have been evangelized. Not everybody, a lot of people. You walk out your door in Oshawa, Canada right now and go to evangelize. Most of the time you'll get a response, yeah, I believe in Jesus. Yeah, I went to church as a kid. And we ran into that as well. Evangelism does not mean transformation. Evangelism is from the dimension of the transformation of the soul, of the person's heart. Societal transformation requires a little more heavy lifting. And my view is it begins with solving problems. No matter first world nation, developing nation, any kind of nation you go to, if you solve a person's problem, if you solve a business problem, if you solve a systemic problem, implement new systems, you have automatically raised your street value.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I began to understand this, and I helped our people to figure out what problem can you solve? Where can you bring a solution? And this is, we can talk about this later maybe, but this is highly connected to personal destiny. And
Yeah.
that's one of the greatest lessons I've learned. Yeah.
Buddy, you should have written Solutionaries then. I, I just should have handed this to you, and this would have been done.
Listen, Brian and Ian, I greatly look up to you guys. So
No, I love how you're saying that, and for us, it would connect to the Luke 10 thing, right? About the felt needs. People have something in their heart that they feel like they need. It's probably a real need, you know. And it's just like you said before. Actually, it happens in all countries. Like we do it well in third world countries. We know they need food, water, education, blah blah blah, and we don't have a problem doing it there. Sometimes in first world nations, we go, we're going to preach, and they're going to come, and it's going to be great, and none of it works.
Yeah, and we're going to package it for our own kingdom. And you've got to understand, I'll give some little bit of heady stuff here maybe, but the presence of more churches in a community does not necessarily mean that community is being discipled.
Right.
We've seen that in America. Take the nation of Jamaica, more churches per capita of any nation in the world, which is really interesting. Yet, the country still continues to suffer systemic violence, systemic corruption on a governmental level, broken families. Nothing against Jamaica. Every country has its wonderful gifts from God and its spiritual diseases. But you can bring evangelism and keep bringing it over into India, into Africa, and you will always win souls, and that's good. But when we're talking about the transformation or discipleship of a nation, this is a bit different. And we actually do have scriptural basis for this with the pre-cross commission versus Great Commission. The pre-cross commission, Jesus said, cleanse the lepers, heal the sick, raise the dead. And by the way, keep it within the four walls of Israel. But then after Jesus' death and resurrection, we call it a Great Commission, which is inclusive of evangelism and water baptism. But now you're into discipling nations. And if we take the Great Commission, not to get into too much depth here, but if we're discipling nations, nations is the noun there, right? Discipling is the verb.
Sure.
We are discipling nations. If we apply that rule to the next line, which is baptizing them, the verb is baptizing. And who are we baptizing? Whole nations.
Yeah.
Baptizing. And so I bring in the Kingdomize piece here. That is, to baptize a nation is to fully immerse a country, an ethnos, any people group into the kingdom.
Yeah.
Literally kingdomizing a people group that's fully immersed. Kingdomize is to fully immerse, right?
Yeah.
And then you take it a little further for all of the Ed Silvoso fans or people who are into this, but baptizing them fully immersed in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This is where you're dealing with identity and covenant, where a country, an ethnos, literally covenants itself back to God. Wow.
Yeah.
And its identity changes because it's been kingdomized.
So good. Derek, that's so good. And so I do want you to speak about your, so where History Makers started was actually these small groups you started, right? These society groups. So the way that you went, you had this epiphany, Chapter's girl is taking over the world and she's showing you a way it happens. And now you're going, I'm going to solve a problem. And then you started these society groups. So talk about that because they're so good. It's so amazing.
Yeah, well, I ran into another problem, and I had to find a solution. And the problem was, now that I knew I needed to equip these people, I tried to bring it into Sunday morning. And what happened was, I thought, okay, there's a lot of stuff I need to share with you. And so I preached for 2 hours instead of 1 hour. And I thought that would get everybody excited and moving. The only movement we had was they just went to another church. It's just too long. And then I understood, okay, I'm going to preach really complex subjects. I was, Sunday morning was 7 points on transforming a nation, stuff that was just not applicable to the wide body. And my problem became what was Peter Wagner's problem at the time, and they held whole meetings about this, which is, what in the world do we do with Sunday morning now? Now that we know where to go and do all this big stuff out there, what do we do with Sunday morning? And I remember being over in Ukraine and listening to Pastor Sunday speaking in a Sunday morning service, and I said to him after in the car, I said, the way you tailored that for everybody, the wider body. And I knew how much he knew and what they were doing in government at the time and transforming the nation. And he said one thing to me that really rocked me. He said, Derek, people don't come to church on a Sunday to listen to a complicated man. And I thought, okay, so if I can't do the big societal transformation equipping on Sunday, and there's a whole bunch of great stuff we do on Sunday that are necessary, right? Water baptism, corporate worship, communion, all of that. I'm going to leave Sunday alone and keep it going. Awesome. Revival. But I'm going to do something midweek and I'm going to train and equip. And so what I did was I gave a survey to our church, and it had one question on it. I said, why do you come to church? And interestingly, 90% answered a certain way. And it was me, my, carpet color, love the kids ministry, my pastor's funny, great answers, good reason to come to church. 10% answered differently. They said, this is where I get filled up to go and bring, however they worded it, the kingdom to their sphere. So I gave an open meeting and said, those who want to be trained and equipped to go and do this out there, you feel called to the marketplace, we're going to have a special meeting for you. And interestingly, 10% of our church came. About 150 people were in that first meeting. And then we did 17 weeks of training and equipping in the stuff that's now in my curriculums and things. And we didn't have worship. We didn't have a veggie tray. It was hardcore. We prayed for the city. We taught, we equipped. And I remember the numbers began to dwindle a bit in the training. And it wasn't people were offended, but there was homework. They had to answer weekly questions. They had to read a book. And some
Stop it.
people, yeah, and we didn't judge those that didn't make the
I'm
cut.
judging them right now. Just so
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Other than you, Brian, we
Okay.
didn't judge them.
But in a really spiritual way. I'm going to call it discernment, not judgment. That's what we call it. Spiritual judgment is discernment. So that's what I'm doing.
So one sweet old lady said, Pastor Derek, do you realize the numbers are getting a little smaller? We should have maybe the guitar, have some worship, bring some donuts. And I said, no, this is all good. Don't worry about it. This is what we want. And at the end of that 17 intensive weeks, we had a pool of graduates who were ready to go and do.
Mm-hmm.
And you find out it's often the most unlikely people. I literally had a Jesus and disciples moment because I thought it was the ready-made leaders that were sitting there in church that would do this. It was people you would not expect who were ready to go. And we released them into society. And the short of this is they created programs that were solution-based, and it made so much impact in a period of 2 years. The mayor of our city, we held an event and he presented us with an award for transformational. This is the word, the transformational impact in the community. And he was shocked when he showed up at this meeting and there were 13 people and a few spouses and helpers. They thought there were hundreds of us because of the impact that was being had. This was 13 graduates. Again, the light bulb went on for me. It's really not about the amount of people you have, but it's quality sons and daughters. So that led me to answer your question. We started getting invited a little bit to this country, to that city. And I'm telling pastors, you're free. You no longer have to be on this hamster wheel of needing to get to the ministerial and with your coffee and say, well, I've got 100 people in my church. And how many do you have? Well, I've got 500 people in my church. And I used to say, well, if everyone showed up, I would have X amount. And I started trying to set them free that it's not about how many people you have in a building. Like, can you imagine we have restricted the mission of Jesus, his death and resurrection, to how many people show up to the Kiwanis Club, church,
Yeah.
on any given Sunday for 2 hours? And that's the work of the ministry?
Yeah, right.
And so as pastors began to get free, they began to implement some of this. And that's where the real stories of transformation began for us. And we have hundreds of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I know we could talk a long time on this, and I would love to do that. It's interesting how you say that because I went through the same process, right? About when going to those pastors' meetings, right? And I started answering by the population of my city. So, so how many in your church? And I would say, oh, about 120,000. They would go, really? I go, yeah. Most of them don't know it yet, but
Yeah.
you know, but again, to start a conversation of, we're called to pastor the city, and maybe it's not just going to be my church or, as you said, history makers or whatever church you pastor, but there is a calling for somebody to come together or a team to come together and pastor the city. So we've got about 10 minutes left, Derek.
Wow.
And
That flew by.
it's crazy, right? But
Yeah.
so what I want you to do, and in case people are listening, we always want to say that when we have these discussions, we're not drawing down the church. We're just drawing up all the other callings,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We want to bring them all up so everyone understands they're called and anointed. I know that's what you believe as well. But you talk a lot about both what happens inside the building and outside the building. Like the strategy, you phrase it this way, the strategy for bridging the gap between what happens in the building and then in society in practical ways. So talk a bit about both of those. Like you've talked now about raising up and releasing mature sons and daughters. Like kind of talk a little bit about that for us. Could you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I would say is that I discovered that every single person has a purpose in this kingdom.
Yeah.
And I know we've labored in the body over purpose for quite a while, and we have the extremes of just self-empowerment to really healthy stuff. But I really discovered that as unique as someone's fingerprint is, they have a unique calling, purpose, and destiny. And that actually is their inheritance. That being given responsibility to solve problems, being a solutionist, is literally an inheritance given to you by God. It makes you godlike. And so, discovering that, now we have a bunch of on fire people who are ready to do something. They might even know what they're wanting to do, but you've got to organize it. You know, Proverbs says the fallow ground of the poor could produce much food, but it's swept away by injustice. But change that word to disorganization. Now we organize these people and we got into system building. And that's a conversation for another day. But I implemented systems within our local church that had the component of training and equipping and then sending in an organized way. And we found that rather than just people scattered out there fighting the good fight, we organized them into small groups. And those small groups we called society groups. And when we did this, take Bulgaria as a case study. When we did this in Bulgaria, these society small groups of equipped churchgoers made such impact through the solutions they brought to sectors of society. I was asked to speak at the European Judges and Lawyers Convention, and I didn't know what to say to a judge or a lawyer. I'm not that smart, but I was asked to speak on the role of truth in rebuilding a society, and specifically former communist one. So what I did was I spoke for a half hour on the principles of the kingdom, truth. And then the second half hour, I just brought up ordinary people onto the stage to testify about what they felt called to do and now are doing. And I saw tears in this event as there was almost a corporate aha moment of, oh, the church can be the driving force of rebuilding society. And once you get them that far, it's easy to introduce this as discipling the nation. And I want to add this point because it's really important is I did, and I've been doing this for about 15 years, I did start to stray over into getting really heady, really locked up in systems. I had my formula, and I went around putting that yoke on people, and I found now I've come full circle, I feel, to the balance of you need the grace of our chief apostle, the Lord Jesus Christ. You need to be healthy, connected to a local church. When you start a project that reaches single moms, the first thing they want to do is join a local church. They want to meet a man, they want a kids program. The local church is just absolutely necessary. But I discovered that if we don't make room for the grace of Jesus, which is divine empowerment in and through the human being, the wow factor just isn't there. Sure, you got a plot of land or you changed a system in this area. One of our graduates invented something for early detection of heart issues and diabetes after graduating our training. Okay, so what if that doesn't translate? Because kingdomize and kingdomizing something, there's a kingdom, but a kingdom has a king. And I discovered if you don't make room for the wow factor, the raw grace that you pay a price for in your lifestyle and prayer, it got a bit boring for me. Got a bit boring. Lots of NGOs, but not much God.
Derek, there's going to be a number of A+1 type personalities listen to this podcast, right? So, will you the rhetoric, you get what you inspect, the whole management thing, and so I'm interested to know that level of balance. It seems if you swung the pendulum where it was overly managed, overly controlled, to somehow lightly controlled, but you're still having some phenomenal outcomes. Do we have any time to give some of the mechanics for that?
Yeah, like I just love this subject on systems. Like I just see it all through the Bible, and I'm fighting to keep from going back and talking about the book of Genesis here. But God would create something once and then subject it to a system. And we implement some of those things within our church. And as a practical example, what we did was I just created a mentoring system where I, as a pastor, made time during the week for that group of individuals once a week to train them, to pour into them. We and then in releasing them as a group, we put a leader in charge of that. I think with the time we have, what might be best for me to say is that many local pastors are just so, speaking from a church context, are just so busy uh, and lack disciplines and organizational understanding. They would love to do what I've just said. They can't find the time for it. And so there is a real piece and necessary ingredient of how to manage well, how to do all that. But you've also got to be spiritual. You've got to release people. And one thing I learned with what I saw over in Ukraine was the things of the kingdom, you've got to hold open-handed. Hold them, but open your hands and let God in. And that's easier said than done because the personality type, which I was once, I was delivered mostly. Every so often, I try to micromanage my wife in the kitchen, and she rebukes me for
That
it.
goes
But
well, I bet.
yeah. But you find out if you can learn to open your hands and get off the hamster wheel of my church. We need growth. We need numbers. And you enjoy. Listen, if I could cut through all the professionalism here and just say something, I sleep well at night because I pour into the one, I pour into the ones, and I release them, and I'm okay with that. Big church, small church. That's what I'm going to be graded for in heaven. We live in a perpetual state of being graded by our peers, right? We have our bios, but really I'm going to be graded by the creator of heaven and earth. Did I learn to love? Did I love and trust? Did I let go? Did I empower? See, my role as an apostle, I believe, is to be a ladder that someone else can climb up to lay hold of their destiny. I'm a doormat. I'm at the bottom of the pyramid, empowering others. And you just learn to let go and make the shift, and you sleep better, lower blood pressure, and enjoy loving the one. Because as you know, I watched my father pass away not too long ago of cancer. And I saw how quickly your church, your organization, the big thing you've built can shift on a dime.
Yeah.
And you're asking, what is legacy? What have I done? It's in the people you loved and empowered.
Yeah, really,
Beautiful.
really good.
Great answer.
So you don't need to necessarily talk about your dad, or you can, but talk a little bit about, that's really important what you said. Talk about some of the people you've talked about, Pastor Sunday from Ukraine. Uh, Talk about some people that have been really inspirational to you, what they've taught you, great lessons, just a couple things like that. I think it would be helpful. We've talked a lot about now your story strategies, but it's really important. What we've found for long term is both those people that inspire you and keep inspiring you. So maybe just a couple people, why they inspired you, why they keep inspiring you.
Sure, and Brian, you asked me to mention you at this point, but I think I'll shift over to
Buddy, I already paid you to mention me. Like, you've got money. Nice. Perfect.
Uh, yeah, I kind of had a two-edged sword of both Pastor Sunday over in the Ukraine making history there, and then my dad in a local church context.
Yeah.
And so I had an unusual opportunity to see the balance of both and not strip the gears. Um, I would like to say that there were a lot of others, but there just weren't. This was kind of trial and error. God did this in my heart through them. I would say, though, that oftentimes the gap between theory and doing comes down to mentorship.
Mm.
So you've got to make space for that as a leader. You should always be a student. We should always be growing. And so I would fly back and forth to Ukraine every year, multiple times. I was just serious. I would carry the guy's bag, um, go where he goes and learn all I could. And as long as I remained a student, I kept growing. And whether it was videos of different teachers and speakers, all of that was good. But the hands-on mentoring, find somebody, follow them, learn from them, and practice implementing. If you don't have mentoring going on, though, if you're not growing, and I call it a prison of self-development. You create a schedule, you create your prison of self-development. Why are some people able to finally get a law degree once they go to prison? It's because of the systems in place that bring out the best in them. Create your system of self-development, your system of mentoring, and learn and grow. And you'll find great ministry, great effects are the overflow of adding value to yourself. And lastly, it's often not the big change you're looking for. As you guys know, probably, books like Good to Great and this, it's the small incremental tweaks you make along the way as you're learning. Make learning your lifelong hobby, and God will announce you as a solutionary to problems.
Yeah, really, really good. Really, really good. As we're getting ready to wrap up here, just thinking through your story, how do people get a hold of you, Derek? We've not even really talked about History Makers, your church, although we've talked about church. We've talked about systems, and I did want to say on the way by that when we talk about discipling nations, it is creating those systems that bring life and thriving to individuals, organizations, and the nation. That is discipling nations, and it does include systems. So I'm glad we talked about that. But how do people get a hold of you, Derek?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube. History Makers TV is our YouTube channel, and it has whole series. If you go to our playlist on system building, on disciple, it's all right there. I would just tell you it's free. Go there. HistoryMakersAcademy.com is in renovation right now as we're lifting and shifting. And you can reach me on Facebook, Derek Schneider. We've got our History Makers Church because we believe in local church, home base. We've got that in Oshawa, Ontario, Canada, then as well. My books are available on Amazon. Just released a new one that's a bestseller, The Secret Laws of Prayer, Your Keys to Breakthrough. But we also have, I've got the books behind me there, but curriculums for society small groups, how to start a society small group. For pastors who might watch this who say, I'd love to start a society small group, I'd love the curriculum, you can order it. We don't parachute in and put our brand on you, or you become swept into our echelon or something. We just want to serve, empower, get the curriculum, start a society small group, reach out to us. We're here to serve you, pastor, in what you're trying to do, and those who are business leaders or anywhere else. We're here to serve.
Amazing, amazing. And if you don't mind, I'll be putting your email up, Derek at historymakersacademy.com, so they
That's
can
great.
reach out to you personally. Is that all right? And
Yep, that's great.
yeah, great. So, Derek, last thoughts before we wrap up today. Last thoughts.
Wow. Last thoughts. I think, because we don't have much time, but one of the greatest keys I was ever given in the area of mentoring was discovering that we don't have to live by in mystery or miracles. We love miracles when they happen, but God has set up the world to run by laws and principles. And if you can discover the fixed laws and principles of any sphere that God created, He created those laws and principles. You can rule as God would rule and kingdomize that sphere. So it's not just about the miraculous. It's not just about revival, but get into the laws and principles and become a Joseph, a Daniel in that sphere and kingdomize it.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, this has been fantastic, Derek. Ian, thanks for today. I knew it would be. I knew when we were setting this up, it was going to be amazing. And so guys,
It's an honor.
so thanks again, guys. And thank you for listening today, whether you're driving, whether you're actually sitting in and watching us. It's all good. Please let people know about this podcast, the Kingdomize podcast. Reach out to Derek as well. I'm sure he's got, as we've already said, he's got lots of stuff that will be very helpful for you, for your church, your small groups, your city. So reach out to him as well. We highly endorse what he's doing as well. So thanks again for tuning in. Next week, we'll be back with another solutionary who's ripping it up for the kingdom somewhere on the planet. Have a good week. Thanks for joining us today on Kingdomize, the podcast. Let's keep the discussion going throughout the week on our socials or on our website, kingdomizeglobal.com. Contact us today to see how we can walk together to see more of God's kingdom in your city as it is in heaven.